Hello and welcome to Real Estate Divas. I'm Kristen Gerst with Capricorn Mortgage Investments and my lovely co-host, the fabulous J. Lee Thompson of Texel Real Estate. And today we're talking about how to buy property subject to.
That's going to be a pretty important strategy to learn, especially coming up with the newest or coming up in this next year in 2021.
In fact, we've been talking 2021 is going to be huge for
all kinds of stuff. So you just want to make sure you have as many tools in that toolbox. You know, I know that gets overused a lot, but really and truly, it's just about learning, keep learning different strategies, because you're just your typical bread and butter of, I'm going to buy this one and I'm going to flip it and I'm going to buy this one. You know, I mean, you've got to get more creative when things start to change.
Well, and especially if we see a drop in prices in the real estate market after the mortgage crisis of '08, this was one of about the only ways to be picking up property, because these people were all underwater. So either they were going to do a short sale or they were going to sell it to you subject to the existing mortgage.
Yeah, or just let it go into foreclosure. You know, I mean,
or let it go into foreclosure. Yeah,
because that's back in the days when there were, you know, 1,200 on the 2,000 foreclosures every month in, you know, just Tarrant County. So, but today we're going to be talking about subject to, and I know a lot of people, they get a little, they're like, subject to, that sounds so foreign. Like, what does that even mean? It's really simple. So the simplest definition that we have is it's basically the acquisition of a real property subject to the existing loan.
Right.
So, I mean, that in layman's terms, that just means you are buying a house from, I'm buying a house from Kristen, but I'm not getting a loan. I'm not going out there and applying for it. I'm not bringing any of my money. All I'm doing is she's signing over the deed to me. The loan stays in her name.
The warranty deed.
Yes.
Signing the warranty deed. The original deed of trust to me, and that note stays in effect.
Yes. And so you're never on the loan. So just to be clear, that's all you're doing is getting the homeowner to agree to sign over the property to you, the actual physical property, not the loan.
Why would a seller do that?
Well, so
I already know the answer.
Yeah,
but,
we already know that. But there's all different kinds of reasons. I mean, like you said before, people get upside down in their property, and then if you're upside down, basically that means that okay, now I can't even sell the property and get enough out of it. That means I'm going to have to go to closing with money, you know, to pay on my mortgage. I'm not making any money at closing. So if that happens, then you want to get out from underneath that property. If you can no longer afford it, then putting it on the market or selling it to an investor doesn't help you at all. You're still stuck holding the bag.
Because you can't write that check. And a lot of times that mortgage is already behind. So it's not only writing a check, it's, you know, it's catching up.
Exactly.
So in addition to their house not being worth what the mortgage.
Or you've got a tax lien. There's also that, you know, there's a tax lien. You're not going to be able to afford to sell your house because of the liens against your house.
Mm-hmm.
It's not always about the mortgage. Sometimes it's about the liens that get acquired over the lifetime of that individual living in that house.
So we're coming into an era where, and I'm starting to see them pop up more and more, where some, you know, especially if a homeowner has a lot of repairs that they need to do and they just can't sell that house.
Yeah.
On MLS for whatever reason it is, I'm starting to see a lot more subject twos get picked up.
Well, and you know, as we said, 2021 is going to be a new era. It's going to be definitely an eye-opening experience for a lot of people.
Well, and hopefully the government will get out of our businesses and say, yeah, you're allowed to evict and foreclose. But when that happens, there's going to be a flood of people who are severely behind on their mortgages and
are going to need help. They're going to need options, not just the typical option of, I can buy your house at a discount, because that doesn't help everyone. That's not a 100% across the board tactic. You want to have other things to offer. You don't want to lose that lead. You're sitting in front of somebody, they want to sell you their house. You don't want to lose it by not knowing how to do this.
Right.
So basically, let's go ahead and get into what kind of properties this is good for. Part of it was, you know, what we just described, but we're talking nice houses, big houses, small houses, crappy houses. I mean, you can use this tactic on just about any type of house out there. Depending on how long and how much you want out of that property.
Well, and the important thing to remember is because you're buying a piece of property subject to the existing loan, there's got to be a loan on there that you're buying is, okay? So if the property is free and clear, that's not this, but it's when there's already an existing mortgage. So it could be anything and any price value.
Exactly. And, we've talked.
What's the biggest one you've ever done?
The biggest one I've ever done, I haven't done many subject to. I've been a party of several subject tos. And I mean, it was a large home here in Dallas. And I mean, it was a nice home, but they had several liens against the property. And they needed help. They couldn't just go the regular route.
The largest one I ever did was a 2-acre estate.
Oh, wow. That's
and it was a gorgeous, gorgeous brand new home. It had been built in 2007. So this was around 2009, 2010, $795,000.
Oh, dang. Yeah, you're talking large. Yeah, this one was somewhere in the 380 range. So it wasn't that big. But still, I mean, you can get creative. You can go ahead and get some of these. Maybe you're a flipper and you stay in that $200,000 range. Well, if you were able to do a subject to and get something a little more high end that you could hang on for a while, then don't dismiss it just because it's out of that little box that you're used to working in. One of the things that you want to make sure that you do, whereas this isn't a complicated process, but it's not necessarily for newbies. It is something that you have to have some guidance with. You're gonna have to have attorneys draw up some documents. You want to talk to people who have been experienced in this genre of investing,
So, and that being said, can individuals who are new to real estate who don't have credit, can they do this?
Absolutely. This is the no credit way of investing in real estate.
But just to be clear, we're saying make sure and ask a real estate attorney, hey, can you look over my transaction for me? Before you jump in and do one on your own and miss something.
Well, and like we were talking before the show, not only do you want an attorney to look at the property, you also are going to need an abstract of title. You're going to want to talk to a title company and be able to pull that abstract of title, which basically just means finding out how many liens are against the property. Is it just the mortgage, or is there a tax lien and a city lien and
IRS tax lien?
Yeah. Who knows how many liens might be, and are you okay with that? You can still purchase the property. You can still do the subject to.
But you might have more stuff to pay off.
Exactly. And as long as you know what you're in for, you know what to expect, and you know what you want out of it, because you go into this having an exit strategy. So you want to know, what that looks like. I think the biggest myth about this one is it's a no money version of getting into a house.
Correct.
And it can be, but
and we'll go over that.
Yeah.
I mean, the way I always did it, and I mean, I did tons of subject twos, especially after the 2008, mortgage crisis. That was the only way that I was buying property. So was subject to, and all of those ways, probably 90% of them I did without a single dollar of my own.
Well, and like I said, that happens. You were already in real estate.
I was already in real estate. So I mean, what I was doing, but
I try to make sure that anyone that I talk to about subject to, you don't go into this thinking you're not gonna have to take a dollar out of your wallet. Typically, that's like 100% of the time. That I don't know. That's like a 99.5%. You're gonna
need some money.
Some money. Some money just to do your due diligence, unless you're buddy-buddy. And if you're new, you're not buddy-buddy with a title company that can pull an abstract for nothing or just as a favor because they know you're going to.
But if they are going to pull it, you're going to spend $50.
Yeah. So now it's going to at least cost you $50.
Right.
And then you've got to talk about the attorneys and getting those type of people involved. And then when you're talking about your exit strategy, depending on what that exit strategy and what that house looks like, you may be spending some money.
So we're going to talk about in just a little bit, we'll talk about the no money exit strategy that I used and got really good at afterwards, and which I suspect is going to be back in a big way.
Absolutely.
So what is the most important thing? I mean, yes, we're going to talk about contracts and we're going to show what those look like. Should we push throw up?
Yeah, hang on let's wait just a second and just go over some of the things that you might come across real quick before we jump to some of the contracts. One of the things that I just want to make completely clear is that and we've got a lot of stories about some shady characters that have done the subject twos. And this has been going on for a long time, and it continues to go on. If you're trying to get into subject to investing, then make sure that you're doing it correctly. When you sign that contract with that seller, you are obligating yourself to be, that you are contractually, ethically, and morally bound to paying that mortgage for them.
So there are many investors out there that do not guarantee those mortgage payments. You need to. Well, guarantee is a strong word, right? It is. And you need to make sure that your sellers know what your intentions are. But morally, yeah, you're taking over this mortgage. You're taking over and you're in charge of somebody else's credit. So remember,
which is
karma.
Part of the sell. Whenever you're selling and you're selling somebody on the idea of a subject to, sell me your house on with a subject to, is that you can save your credit. You won't have a foreclosure on your
right.
On your
and by this point, when they're willing to do a subject to, they cannot afford that mortgage.
Yep. Every
Every month, they can't afford it. They need to move. They know they need to move. They're not sleeping at night.
Exactly. I mean, anxiety is high and they're just trying to get out from underneath it. So you're making a promise of, hey, I'm going to do this for you and you can go on with your life. But just know, do it ethically. And that's the one thing that we are going to state several times throughout this episode today, is that that's the most important thing. Don't give the rest of us a bad name. Do it ethically, be upfront, be honest, make sure all of your documents state it time and time again. Repetition is key, you know.
And that it's clear and that they know what they're doing.
They know what they're signing.
But when you are talking to sellers, yes, you need to say, I'm going to take over your mortgage. You're not going to be responsible for those payments anymore. I'm going to be making those for you.
Exactly.
And that is one of the biggest sellers for that. The next thing is they always want to know, how long is this going to stay on my credit?
Which is the duration of that loan. And again, it sits on what is your exit strategy, which we'll talk about some of those towards the end of the show today. But it all depends on your exit strategy. If you plan on renting that until that mortgage has been paid off completely.
It'll be 25 years.
Yeah, and they have 25 years left on that mortgage. Well, then it'll be 25 years. It looks like you own this house, period.
Well, and when times are bad and you pick up these loans subject to, these sellers are so grateful and so happy at the closing tale.
Yeah.
You go another 2 years into it and all of a sudden the market rebounds and they hate you because
now they can't. Now they're hindered because that's on their debt to income ratio,
right,
and qualifying for other loans out there.
Right, and so they can't go. I've had so many call me and go, "What are you doing with this loan? I can't go buy another house. You said it would only be 12 to 24 months. It's now it's 30 months past that. I want to buy another house. What's your plan?"
That's why it's disclose. Put it in writing, and put it in writing on several different disclosures so that you have them signing that off, because typically they might come back. I say they probably will come back when things are a little bit better or they're in a better financial
and when they're
state.
a little bit better and then they get on Zillow, which is not reliable anyways, as we've talked about, but they get on Zillow and they're like, well, my house is now worth like twice what you picked it up at.
Yep.
And aren't I entitled to some of that money? No.
No, you signed the documents, you signed it over.
And you've sold the house.
Yep.
So yes, it is, I don't like subject to's necessarily staying out there
for a long period
of time.
I mean, you've just got to evaluate the situation and how you're going to handle that. And if you're disclosing and you're making those payments, then you have you own that property. So the money, whenever we say not any money out of pocket, or that this isn't that strategy, this is why. So there's a few reasons why. Is sometimes you're picking up the property and it looks like crap. Like it's never been updated, or I mean, or they've destroyed it or whatever,
and sometimes it's a bad, maybe it needs these HVAC repaired.
Yeah, maybe it's
or
not
the roof,
something
or there's some minor foundation repair. It's got old windows, and they just don't have the money to do it. And it's not selling.
Exactly. So you're going to have to make it, no matter what your strategy is, you're going to have to make those repairs. And typically that's either making those repairs so that it's adequate to rent the property or to just turn around and sell it outright. So that's the money that you're going to need whenever you go and do the subject to. And
what's the way that newbie real estate investors could find that money, though, for rehabs?
Well, you can find that money through private money. If you've got private money lenders out there, there are some private money lenders
or somebody to JV with you. So if you know somebody, hey, they've got some money they want to invest, you pick it up subject to, go, all right, well, I'm going to need, $20,000, $25,000.
And people will JV that. If the numbers are right, they'll JV that all day. Mm-hmm. The more seasoned investors, absolutely. And like we said, you don't want to be doing this as a newbie. You really need some guidance, because while it's not super complicated, it is a more advanced strategy for picking up properties.
Right. And just talking to people and going, hey, I've got a lead on subject to deal. I've already negotiated it. I know the numbers. I'm looking for somebody to JV with me on it.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and another reason you might have to pay, now more seasoned investors never do this, but when you're just trying to get that property and you're like, I'm so eager, this one is such a good deal, I want to get it, then a lot of times they'll pay out of pocket to just move. They just need to move it. If it's a sweet enough deal and you want it, then maybe you're paying the original homeowner, $1,000 to move.
Correct.
So here's your money to move, $1,000, $5,000, whatever it is, y'all agree on.
I've often found, yes, sometimes you can convince them, hey, they just want to get rid of it. Mm-hmm. But a lot of times they need money to move.
Exactly. They can't afford to get out. They can't afford to do a deposit and first month's rent and all of this business to get into a new rental property.
Right.
And one thing you never want to do is rent it back to them. They couldn't afford it in the first place.
Right.
So,
and if their mortgage, you're obviously going to rent it at a higher price,
rate. Yeah,
so that you're profitable because you're covering that mortgage. If they couldn't pay for their mortgage anyways, how are they going to pay a higher monthly cost per rent?
Exactly. And then the other one that people talk about all the time is in your mortgages, in your original mortgages, there's always what they call a due on sale clause. And this gets talked about a ton throughout the investor world, but it very, very rarely happens. You want to go ahead and explain
I'm going to go ahead and explain it because, most people have heard me talk about this at one time or another.
Yeah.
I had Bank of America on my own personal mortgage call me up and say, we noticed that you sold this property. And I was like, damn, I'm caught. They caught me. The due on sale clause is coming. And, in the back of my mind, I'm going, how am I paying this thing off? And, how fast can I pay it off? And I just explained to him what I did. I said, yes, I sold it and I did a wraparound mortgage and I've been paying every month. And the guy goes, well, are you going to continue paying your mortgage? And I said, well, yes. Yeah. And he goes, okay, that's all I need to know. Hung up, never heard from him again.
And that's, more often than not, anybody that, Grant's talked about this several times. Grant Kemp, who talks about, these type of transactions all the time. He's had experiences with that. And what he says time and time again is, are you going to continue to make those payments, and they're timely payments, and you're not late, and you're going to pay off this mortgage? It's really what the bank wants to hear.
And they're in the business of collecting their monthly payments.
Yeah. They don't really want the house. They want the payment, and they want you to pay it off, the whole kit and caboodle. They want you to pay off that interest, pay off that mortgage, and don't pay it off early, really.
Yeah, just keep it going and
keep it going.
Yeah, absolutely. So everybody's afraid of that due on sale clause. I can tell you from personal experience, and I have wrapped a bunch of my own personal loans and subject to notes. I've never had one called.
Yeah.
And I've talked to the bank, and I knew they knew what I was doing.
Well, and that right there, that one usually scares most people who are getting into this and they first hear this. They're like, isn't that illegal? Isn't that this? Isn't what if I need that money? I'm telling you, it doesn't happen very often. It does once in a blue moon.
The other thing is read the document.
Yeah.
So the due on sale clause is the option to call that note due. It is not the obligation. And those are two completely different words. Yes, they can if they so choose, but if the payments are being made on time and it's caught up and
why would they
don't, yeah, and it makes their books look good, they're not gonna go mess with it.
Exactly.
They don't need a foreclosure on their record to have to go deal with.
Exactly. That one costs them money in the get-go.
It does, and why do that when they can continue making money here and hopefully maybe it gets refinanced by the new owner. Maybe that property gets sold in the next couple of years.
Exactly.
Much easier than dealing with a foreclosure.
So those are basically the reasons why you don't want to go into this whole strategy thinking, this is a no credit, no cash.
A lot of times
you're going to be spending money.
A lot of times you're going to have to catch up a loan. Mm-hmm. So if you're planning on keeping that as a rental or flipping it yourself, you've got to catch up that mortgage when you go to closing.
Exactly.
That can be a lot of money. I've seen some pretty expensive ones in my day.
And you'll find that out when you go to meet the homeowner. That's one of the biggest questions you want to ask. How far behind are you? Can I see your mortgage statement?
Your most current mortgage statement.
Most current.
Not one from a couple months ago, but
yeah.
Show me what it is now so that I see exactly how far behind you are. Because it's not just back payments, it's also late payments.
It's
fees.
Everything.
And if they've started with attorneys, then you've got attorney's fees on top of it.
Exactly. So that's all important stuff for you to remember whenever you hear, hey, subject to is cashless and creditless and go for it. That's not it. It is creditless for sure, but not cashless.
Yeah. But you can always find somebody to JV with.
Yep.
Or when we get into exit strategies, my exit strategy for it, which do it with no money too.
Yeah. So a lot of times people ask me, well, who on earth would sell their property? And we touched on this. These people are a lot of different reasons. So one could be, I inherited the property, but now the property has a bunch of liens. I have my own house. I can't afford these liens, and that's the only way I'm going to keep it. No, I need some help here. And, people getting behind, not able to afford.
Well, that's what we're going to see. I mean, they projected early on several months ago that we would see 40% default. And when you can't pay your mortgage and you're wondering, where am I going to move to? Am I going to have to file bankruptcy, or am I going to, be foreclosed on, which sits on your credit for 7 years? You want to try to avoid that at all costs. Really, if you're already behind 2-3 months on your mortgage, you are jacking up your credit anyways. So you really want to kind of stick, you want to tell these sellers, it's a good thing to have this remain on your credit, and let's get it current, and then I'm going to be paying that mortgage for you every month on time. This will actually build up your credit so that you can go get another house down the road. Exactly.
So, and get into an apartment or get into, all of these things, because the foreclosure affects so much. And a lot of people don't realize that. And the more things are getting automated with the rental industry, foreclosures are typically not rented to. If it's a corporate owned rental unit, they don't accept anybody with a foreclosure, because that automatically tells them you don't pay for your
housing.
Yep, exactly. Now, bad credit, maybe we can deal with it a little bit. Maybe they're going to up the price of the deposit, or they're going to, they may manipulate it a little bit, but still get you in there. But the whole foreclosure thing, it really haunts you for a while. So you do want to avoid that. And that's part of your sales tactic whenever you're trying to show a seller, hey, here are the options. I can offer you, this, and this. One is, if you're doing a hard money loan, then obviously I can offer you a discounted price for your property, which that's not going to be an option. Retail's typically not an option because they don't have the time. And this is all about speed and ease of transaction.
and then getting them out of it. And all they want right now is for their stress to end.
Yes. And a lot of times, because of the speed you can do a subject to, if they're days away from a foreclosure, there's very few tactics that you can do without just outright coming to the table with the whole lump sum. Very few tactics you can do just days before foreclosure that will stop that foreclosure, and this is one of them.
Right.
So on to the next one. So our documents that we need.
Yes.
So these are not all the same documents that you would use for a regular transaction.
No. And again, we had this debate before the show where I've said, and she goes, well, you're an experienced, real estate investor. So I always used a 1 to 4 family.
Yep.
And then put something into special provisions. But our realtor expert broker here, she's saying you don't want to do that.
Yeah, you really don't want to do that. What you want to do is have your attorney draw something up for you that's very specific to this type of transaction, a subject to transaction. Whereas the 1 to 4 is meant for a loan. Yes, you did put
or seller financing.
Yeah,
or loan assumption.
So, I mean, it can work, but that's not really what we're encouraging here.
Right. So do you want to...
So here's an example. I mean, it's a 1-page. You're trying to make it as simple of a process as possible. Here's a 1-page example of just the agreement of
Ryan,
purchase.
Can you pop up our page there? There we go.
And it basically runs down. It's a lot of the same information that you would find on a 1 to 4.
Yeah.
But
get rid of
the thing?
HP.
My HP, sorry.
Status.
I was like, what's that Ryan's got up on there?
All right.
Apparently we need ink.
I'm like, that's all Ryan's fault there. No.
But this one's specifically for subject to transactions. So it's a pretty standard one, and you can go online and look for them and kind of find examples of that. But I can't say it enough. You really want to talk to an attorney throughout this transaction. They're going to be pulling your abstract of title anyway, or the title, the title company is owned by an attorney. They can look at this and they can go, okay, I'd tweak it here or tweak it there. And they have standard forms as well.
Well, and it depends on state and where you're located and all of that. So yes, go through this, figure out if you do need to make changes to it. If you all want a copy of this, just DM us.
Yeah, we'll shoot it to you.
Put in the comments, and we'll send it over to you. Yeah.
But one of those, and then, like we said earlier, the first thing you definitely want to ask for, even before you go to that appointment, is will you make sure that you have your most current mortgage statement? That you need to know. That's the thing that's going to be that you need to make your decisions, how far behind you are. If you can pull
because you're going to need that too to also pull, put in the numbers for this contract that you're probably going to want to sit there and do at the table anyways.
Exactly. Because when you're in front of a seller and they're open to this, that's what you want to get the signatures then. Not that you're pressuring anybody, but you've given them their options. They've selected their option. Let's go ahead and seal the deal. It's all about closing it. I don't care if it's me trying to close a listing. I want them to sign while I'm sitting there in front of them, not 4 days from now after they've molded over and talked to their aunt and talked to their brother-in-law and talked to their grandma on the East Coast, and everybody's saying, no, don't do it. You don't know what you're doing.
Right.
Because there is a lot of misinformation out there about subject twos. Then the other biggest thing that you want to...
Are we doing your GSA?
Oh, yeah, the GSA is good. That's just for repetition.
Repetition. So this is more like, this is just plain English saying, yes, I
am authorized.
I understand what I'm doing.
I understand what I'm doing, and I authorize you to go ahead and get information for me. I'm authorizing you. You can then, in turn, you're going to turn around and you're going to send this to the bank and make sure that if anything was to happen, you're not going to just send it all willy-nilly. You do this transaction. But if anything, if they were to make that call to you like they did to Kristen.
Right. Now, and it's important, banks don't usually like this.
No.
Right? I mean, when they called me, that was my loan, and I was still in charge, and I wrapped it. When you're talking about this, now the loan is out of the control of the person they lent it to, and the property's also, the property's already been deeded to somebody else. So that's a slightly different thing. You don't ever want to show off.
No, you're not just automatically sending information to the mortgage company. What you want to do is just keep making those payments, get them caught up, keep making those payments. But you have these documents as a CYA. You have them for when somebody turns around and goes, wait, why are you doing this? Who are you again? And no, I can't disclose any of that information. Then you can provide this and go, no, you can. I've been authorized.
Right. But the most important document, and I tell people this all the time, and you need this before you close. Don't think you can go back and get this after the fact. Have this signed with the contract.
Yes.
Right there at the contract table. They want to do it. They know they want to do it. You need a power of attorney to talk to the bank about this mortgage on their behalf. And if you're looking right there, second paragraph, right under this, can we throw that back up there, please? Okay. So right under where it says State of Texas, County of Dallas, it says, I name a borrower. You're going to put the name of the person who's on the loan, and you have to put their complete social security number after that. The other thing that I always like to get, a copy of their driver's license. And the reason why you want that is, one, to make sure that it is them who is selling you the house and it's the same guy. But a lot of times you also need to know their birth date. And so instead of just coming out and saying, hi, what's your social security number and birth date, which would freak me out too if anybody ever did that, asking for a copy of their driver's license just sounds...
Well, and it's just good to have on hand. So when you're building this type of file for a subject to, and a lot of people get really scared when they hear power of attorney. Mm-hmm. Power of attorney, I don't want you dealing with, that means I'm signing everything over to you. You want a limited power of attorney for just that piece of real estate. That piece of real estate, you're already deeding it to me. I just need a power of attorney in case you go to Jamaica or fall off the end of the earth or whatever, that I can actually communicate on your behalf so that this doesn't go in default. It is for their protection as well.
The other thing is that you need is a lot of times the login information just to get into that loan information.
Yep.
And sometimes they don't want to give it. It's always better if you can get that ahead of time. But I mean, you can run into problems, and if you don't have this durable power
of attorney,
you will not be able to talk to insurance. You will not be able to talk to the bank, title company. I mean, nobody will talk to you over this loan. So if it gets sold someplace, you won't know where that.
Yeah, you're not going to get the mail. You're not going to get alerted if there are any changes. If they've sold your loan to somebody else, and now you're like, I'm making payments to the wrong
bank.
The wrong note holder. So all of those reasons are the reasons that you need to make sure you have the right documents. And again, it's either JVing with somebody who's done this before, or it is just getting an attorney that's going to walk you through, a savvy attorney that's familiar with this type of strategy.
Well, that's going to make sure your contract is right. Again, you're going to send this to a title company once you're done.
Absolutely.
Close it at a title company. There's no reason not to. Don't be going to Kinko's and sitting down there with a Kinko's, notary. People do that still. I'm like,
I know.
Go to a title company.
Is Kinko's still around?
Kinko's,
actually,
FedEx,
I
Kinko's?
just had to do a FedEx Kinko's. Although I don't know.
I think it's FedEx Kinko's now, but it's Kinko's.
Yeah.
FedEx is the shipping time, but a lot of people still like to close real estate transactions there. They're like, oh, I can do the docs myself, and we'll just,
Yep. Well, and I know that whenever I've been sitting in front of somebody and I'm having them fill out, whether it's the subject to documents because a lot of times with some of my investor clients, I'll go with them on the appointment, because since I'm licensed by the state of Texas, then that gives this investor some validity, it gives them more weight than just some Joe Schmo that they're about to sign a power of attorney and I'm going to give you my social security number. I can sit there and go, look, I'm overseeing this transaction and making sure that, and affiliated with it, and making sure that everything gets filled out properly, because I want you to know that we're handling things properly. And just knowing that somebody in the room has a license that could be taken away if things go awry.
Right.
And things do go awry.
But, and once you do a few of these, can you go to an appointment by yourself? And once you learn what to say to the sellers and how to combat and argue different points of why this is in their best interest to do it.
More than anything, just explain in kind of layman's terms and explain, look, you go this route, this is what that looks like. The more you do this, the more ease of those conversations. And I know one of the things that we always said when it came to, because there's always some pushback when it comes to social security number, like they're more willing to sign over that house than to give you their social security number, because
which is crazy.
That's you're taught about all kinds of fraud out there,
and identity
and it
theft.
happens, and identity theft. But that is that's with people who actually have credit that you want to steal.
I've never heard that argument about, but that's kind of funny.
Yeah, and that's what typically.
I wouldn't be laughing at the table about that,
But those are the conversations that I've had to have, whether it's the subject to conversation or it's a short sale and I need all of this personal information. I'm like, look, I have good credit. I'm not trying to steal your bad credit. Like, it's kind of, I'm not trying to be insensitive, but I'm not trying to steal.
Yeah, they're worried about you stealing their Social Security money that's never going to come because there's no such thing in 20 years.
Right. And then there's that. Yeah. But, you're not trying to be super insensitive. You're still trying to make the deal happen. But the more you can kind of explain to them why identity theft happens, and it happens to people who have
good credit,
and I'm going to use it to buy myself all this stuff.
I'm just loving that. I'm loving this argument of why you need to why it's not a risk for you personally, you sir, to give me your social security number and birth date. I'm loving that. I would have to probably practice on my delivery of that a little bit without it sounding a little bit like, dude,
harsh. Super harsh.
It's kind of like when,
nobody's going to give me anything with this social. Yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of like where I was missing for like 10 minutes and my husband's friend was like, dude, it's like the movie Taken. And my husband's like, dude, that's for young women. That one's been, she's a little old.
Or you're at a meetup and somebody thinks you're flirting with them and you're like, no, thank you.
Yeah.
Not just no, but hard pass no.
Yeah.
I have no clue what that feels like.
Yeah, nobody wants your nasty credit. I don't know that we say it like that.
No, you find a nice way to say it. I mean, we all know how to use that thesaurus and figure out a nice way to say it. Maybe practice it a few times before you go and sit in front of that homeowner. But I mean, that is an argument, and there's always it's always amazing to me the amount of pushback that you get whenever you try to get the kind of that sensitive information. They'll show you a bank statement, or not a bank statement, they'll show you a mortgage statement all day, but that doesn't have their social on it. So you really have to be sensitive, but sometimes just kind of this is laying it out there.
So the next thing that sellers really want to know is, how does this get off of my credit, right? How do I get completely done with this piece of property? And so you want to lay out very confidently your exit strategies.
Exactly. And there's several ways, there's a ton of ways to skin a cat. So, I mean, there's several ways that you could be.
First off, fix and flip.
Yeah.
You are going to fix whatever's wrong, and you're going to list it on MLS, and you're going to sell it. Sellers love that idea. They don't have the money.
Then it comes and go, and it actually will boost their credit once that sells. I mean, it'll help them get that credit score back up.
But again, depending on how the market is and depending on how fast things are moving. And remember, that's not always a possibility with subject to once the market goes down, because a lot of times houses are underwater. So you can't go, oh, well, yeah, I'm going to get this and then
turn around and sell it. Well, if you turn around and sell it, then you're still not going to make money. You know, so your goal here is to hold on to it and wait it out until the market's back up.
Right.
And so typically that's what ends up happening is you're going to go ahead and you're going to rehab it. And then you're going to throw a renter in there that covers, the rent covers at least the mortgage and then some. You figure out what that and then some is, you know, based on market rents. And you have a renter in there paying that mortgage for you for however long you want it. But all of that, again, disclosure. You really want to let them know. If you don't know what your exit strategy is right that second, then you can lay out all of them. Look, these are all options and I'm going to weigh them all, but I don't know yet. But you need to know there's a possibility this, if you have 25 years left on this loan, it could be here for 25 years.
So, and the important thing to be telling sellers is get their expectations in line. Don't tell them that it's going to be a year when it's not.
Exactly.
And
because if you think you won't get that phone call,
you're going to get that phone call.
You're going to get that phone call.
And you don't want people mad at you. It's awful. It's an awful, awful thing to tell people, oh, I'll have this off your credit in a year. And 3 or 4 years later, it's still there because you don't know what you're going to go do with it yet.
Yeah.
So especially if you're renting, you just leave it open-ended. Say it's probably going to be around the 2 to 3 year range. I've got to get a renter in there, and then you've got to get this property sold once the market rebounds. But again, make sure they know the market's got to rebound.
Exactly.
Because we've got to get this where there's actually a profit here.
Well, and you think about 2008, you know, that was a, what, 5-year, 7 year that it took for things to...
7, depending on some of the neighborhoods.
Exactly. For things to rebound and start moving again to where it wasn't just investors picking up and grabbing properties. It was real people were actually able to qualify once again.
So, and then my favorite exit strategy, which is owner financing, that is the best way to do it without any money. So if you've got something where you've got to catch it up $3,000 to $5,000, because you're owner financing it, you can often owner finance it as is, no repairs.
Yes.
So you've got to catch up that mortgage, and people are like, well, how do you do that? And, you know, and owner finance it without having any money. You do a simultaneous close. So you've got it under contract, and while you've got it under contract, you're going to go market and find your owner finance buyer for that house. You have to make sure that you have access to that house to be able to show it as you like. And a lot of times I told the sellers what I was doing. I said, okay, this is what I specialize in. I will bring them in, and then we're going to do a couple of things on the back end. So you've got your owner finance buyer, and from their down payment, you catch up that mortgage.
Exactly. And you already know what that mortgage, what's in arrears for that mortgage. So you know that dollar amount that you can ask for. Because with owner financing, you're not just, it's not like a deposit, and it's not just 3% of whatever the loan is. The owner financing is whatever you decide that down payment needs to be.
Right.
And sometimes you negotiate a little bit, but if you decide, okay, I need $15,000 for the down payment on this property because the arrears is 12 and I want to make a little something, then that's what it is. And you go out and you find that owner finance client, that homeowner that wants to, or buyer that wants that and has it.
So then the next question is, people are going, wait a minute, there's, well, 2 that are popping up. People are like, do people really have $15,000 to put down on owner finance? Yeah, they've got more.
Yep.
They've got a lot more. Yeah, I've taken $60,000 down.
There are a ton of people out there. I mean, and we're not just talking, like we said, these types of houses, if you're doing subject to, you can use it on all kinds. It doesn't have to be just depressed neighborhoods or really nice neighborhoods. It can be middle income. It can be across the board. And the same goes for owner finance clients. You'd be surprised how many people are out there that their credit is kind of jacked, mainly because they don't pay attention, or they spend a lot of money and then they pay
health
it,
bills.
or they have health bills, and their credit is jacked, but they've got plenty of money to buy a house.
Yeah.
Plenty of money socked away in savings.
And they've got a great rental history, and
Yep.
yeah, they've got some bad debts on those. But people are always surprised. They're like, I can't believe there would be that big of down payments when somebody can't qualify for a mortgage. So that's one. And the second thing is, people are asking, well, how can I own or finance something and create another loan on something if I've got an existing mortgage? And everybody write it down. It's called a wraparound mortgage.
Yep.
So that's where you've got your existing debt and you're going to wrap your own mortgage to somebody around it. And then you're transferring warranty deed to...
Hashtag wrap donut.
Wrap donut.
Wrap
exactly.
donut.
Wrap donut.
Yeah.
Anyways, so yes, it's totally possible to do it. Then they want to go, okay, so you're going to find a buyer, and then the exit strategy is that, well, how long is this going to stay on my credit? My answer to that is, one, this will instantly raise their credit, and we will encourage them to refinance. Does that happen? No. Like 1% of the time. And I love all these owner finance guys out there teaching it, going, oh yeah, and then they just refinance and they pay you off in a year. No, that doesn't happen. So please don't tell that that's your end goal, because really you're leaving that in the hands of somebody else. Are there other things you can do? Yes. You can, one, sell that mortgage, right, and pay that off.
Yeah.
Or, they could sell the house, the actual homeowners. So you have exit strategies. So if you really need to get out of that subject to purchase that you've made, and they say, we'll do this, but I'm going to give you only 2 or 3 years, and you're coming up on, say, that 3rd year, and you need to know what to do. Yeah, your end exit strategy could be to just go sell that note that you've created.
But just be clear when you're sitting in front of that homeowner and you're trying to get them to sign those documents, is best case scenario, this is what it could be. But you need to really, what's left on your loan? Is it 10 years left on your mortgage? Then there's a good likelihood that this will be here for 10 years. But like you said, those payments are going to be made like clockwork, because that's your job as buying this subject to. That's what you want to do, is it's made, and it's constantly bringing up, just those regular payments are bringing up their credit score, as long as they're not doing a bunch of other
as long as you're not doing
stuff.
a bunch of other stuff.
But that alone, that's a constant, is that their credit score is going to stay, it's going to help their credit score, is basically what you want to make sure you let them know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's really the most important thing, is they're hearing, okay, win. I end my stress today. And then my credit's going to go up, and I'll be able to buy another house in the near future, that they're going to be able to do it.
Yeah, but just that anxiety, just that burden being lifted off their shoulders. If you've never been there with something financial going on, I know I have, I know Kristen has, and you're just like overwhelmed and just consumed with it, and it's an everyday just anxiety attack.
Right.
To know that that's all coming to an end, and you can walk away like, just that alone is going to be your biggest sell.
I agree.
So real quick, we've kind of hit all our high notes, but so I know you've got some horror stories with this. I've got one in particular.
Yeah, so
this is our don't be that guy.
Don't be this guy. So I bought a house subject to tons of equity in it. And I had this thing going for years, older gentleman, and was basically homeless, I think, after this. I think he was living on people's couches. He figured out that every January they were sending out the escrow analysis.
Mm-hmm.
So he would log in and change the mailing address every freaking January.
Wow. And
then I wouldn't know about it or that it's happened until I got smart about 3 years in a row of it. And then he started, and so he'd get the escrow check sent to him, and then I had to come in and cover it.
Wow.
Because
Yeah.
You got to have it. I mean, when that escrow check was sent there, that's not my money. That was my borrower's money.
Yeah.
And here this guy is stealing it. And it happened every year. And then he ended up.
And so you were having to cover the taxes.
Yeah.
So basically, that for those who don't know, then he was taking that money that was being
the
held.
overage, right? The escrow overages. But legally, I was required to make sure that overage got to my buyer.
Yeah.
And that was just a legal thing.
Yep.
That I had to make sure and do. I had to cover that.
Wow.
To keep all of the escrows in line with the note servicer. And I did it every year. On the third year, I got wise. He did it. I changed it back. He figured that out. He called and had me removed as power of attorney.
Yeah, but he already signed the power of attorney.
You can have it removed afterwards. So after that, I wrote, I had that, he didn't want the property back. Yeah. He just wanted his little escrow bonus every year.
Wow.
So
that's shady.
Ended up selling that note.
That's shady on that on the original homeowner's part.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my shady experience was on basically the investor's part. There's a gentleman that I won't name, but there's an investor that was going around kind of like at the beginning of, not that subject to and owner financing hasn't been around for a very long time.
Yeah, decades.
But it wasn't very talked about. There were people in little pockets that knew about it because we're talking like 15 years ago or something.
This is something, these have been going on since like the 80s.
Yeah. Well,
but Chem 08, not a lot of people knew about it.
We didn't have YouTube videos. We didn't have, a bunch of classes on this. You either knew about this little strategy or you didn't, or you knew somebody who did.
Right.
And so it took me a second to figure out exactly what he was doing, but he was basically convincing these homeowners that they need to sign it over subject to getting power of attorney, blah, 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 and then putting renters into the properties and then not making
a
one
single payment.
And so all of these houses start going into foreclosure. And this was during a time where they were holding the foreclosures for a pretty long time, right?
Right.
So
they
kind of sat on the books for a long time. It wasn't like a 3-month turnaround or anything like that. And so the renters are starting to get these foreclosure notices in the mail.
And they've been paying the rent on time.
And they've been paying the rent on time. And he's saying, oh, don't worry about those. That's a mistake. That's a mistake. And I happen to know 2 of his renters. So 2 separate houses, came in contact with this guy and then also ended up listing a house, kind of listing it, more like wholesaling it before wholesaling was a thing, but listing a house that he tried to get. And so all of this is going on. And then I start doing my research on this guy. All he has is a P.O. box. Can't find him anywhere. It being a small world, one of my junior high boyfriend's best friend was working as his assistant, started calling him going, I think we're doing some really shady stuff. And then so my ex-boyfriend from junior high is calling me going, hey, have you ever heard about this? And I said, what's his name? And it ended up being the same guy. He was a real estate broker, lost his license, got sued out the wazoo. Don't be that guy.
And he's dead now because Jay Lee buried him in the backyard.
Hey, there's no proof.
But you know what? He was an actual broker.
Yeah, he risked his license.
Crazy.
He risked his license for that.
I
was amazed. I was like, why would you risk your license for that when you can do it legally?
So I have one more story, which really goes into when you're picking up stuff subject to plan on only having it a shorter amount of time. Don't think that you're going to necessarily, there are investors who keep this stuff 10, 15 years.
Yep.
But the likelihood is you probably shouldn't do that and probably have an exit strategy that's more of a 3 to 5 year on the max. I have an investor who came to me and she was begging me to buy the note from her. And I said, well, what's going on with this? And she said, okay, so I've owner financed it to this person. The person who she owner financed it to died. And it got stuck in probate. So now she's got this house that's wrapped around a subject to loan. She's having to keep it current every month, but she can't even contact the guy's family, who died. She's like, this could go on for 2 years.
Wow.
Because it's stuck in probate. And she's like, do I continue to pay this and not get any income in it? Because she doesn't own that house.
Yeah.
It's not like she can go move all of that stuff out and go turn it into a rental.
Wow.
So, yeah, she ended up losing the house. Because she couldn't keep paying for it, and she had no idea it was open-ended. I think she paid for it for about 5 or 6 months. But then was like, I can't keep doing this.
Yeah.
And there's no legal recourse for me.
Yeah.
To come after it.
Wow. Yeah, so try to aim for that short-term turnaround. I mean, short-term, relatively speaking. Short-term doesn't mean in 6 months or a year.
No.
I mean, but have a couple of different exit strategies that you can propose and that you are familiar with, or at least your JV is
and a lot of it's going to depend on the underlying lien.
Yeah.
And what who you have access to JV with. All of those things might make it a little easier to decide exactly what exit strategy you're going for.
Exactly.
Because, if it's underwater and you want to rent it out for 3 years or so until it's above.
Until that equity starts to grow.
That equity's there, yeah, sure, why not?
Yeah.
If it's got a lot, it's got $8,000 behind and you're like, well, I can get $15,000 down for this.
Mm-hmm.
So you might want to own or finance it just to be out of pocket little to no money.
Exactly. And to limit your risk, that risk factor.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's pretty much the gist of it. I hope y'all enjoyed this. I mean, if anybody has any questions, or if y'all want those documents, the example documents that we threw up on the screen today, then just holler and we'll be happy to send them to you or drop them in the comments.
And most importantly, and I'm going to look at the camera and say this, go get your power of attorney signed. The amount of investors who do subject to deals and do not have a power of attorney is staggering. So go get that power of attorney.
Yeah. Make sure that when you go to the appointment, you bring everything. I mean, I think I've done a whole show
the power of attorney does
working
need
out
to be,
of your car.
Right. The power of attorney does need to be notarized.
Yep.
So just remember that. If you're not a notary, you do need to get that document notarized. A lot of times, if he has a realtor that he's working with or something like that.
Yeah. Or you just, you can hire a notary to come and meet you. So there's
Absolutely.
that too.
Yeah.
So, anything else?
End on a high note.
A scolding.
A scolding.
The whole time you're like, hey, we're going good. We're teaching. And you're like, let's get into some horror stories. And it was funny horror stories. And then the last two were like, wah,
wah. Stuff like, stuff like that happens. But overall, it's a really great way to buy property.
Well, and like we talked before the show, it is like one of those things that is probably going to become more prevalent.
Oh, 2021, we're going to see a ton of it.
So you need to educate yourself. There's a ton of videos. Of course, check out ours first, but I love subject to, especially because it's not on my personal credit. Exactly. And that's how I got into it, because I had 21 loans on my personal credit when the market collapsed in 2008. I was getting loans from everybody, but it was all on my personal credit. So I was toxic to lend money to. I had to get rid of those. That's not what you want, people.
No, don't do that.
Not what you want.
Don't do that. Put it on somebody else's credit.
So if you have any questions, please drop the comments in there and we will get back to you. I know there were a couple of people from last week that we were able to talk with. And share, jump on our YouTube channel and subscribe. I was like, what's that word again?
What's the word? Subscribe. Just hit that little subscribe button. Yes. Thumbs up.
Real quick, say hi to Rob. He says, "Damn, it's been a while. Glad to see you back."
Hey, Rob.
Hey,
Love
Rob.
it.
And I guess that's about it. I'm Jay Lee Thompson with Texel Real Estate. I am currently recruiting agents. Like this last week, I've been like super busy with a lot of agent calls, and I recruit all over Texas. So if you're looking to change brokerages, or you're interested in investing in real estate, but your current broker doesn't exactly encourage it or doesn't have the education for you to learn from, then give me a shout. Drop me email, hit me up on Facebook, Instagram, drop it in the comments on our YouTube channel, whatever you like.
Excellent. And I'm Kristen Gerst. I am always looking for owner finance mortgage notes to buy, especially when they're like 9 or 10% performing. Texas, love those. But send me whatever you have. You can find me, put it down here. I'll DM me. Or you can send your documents to info@capricornmortgage.com, and I will get you an offer right away.
Nice. Y'all have a wonderful week. Thanks for joining us, and I hope you learned something. Bye.